Okay, in this lesson 3.5b, we're talking about moving from one quadratic form to another. In other words, we're connecting the quadratic forms kind of together. Before we dive into this one, I'm going to do a quick review of where we came from, the last two sections that we covered. So I'm going to turn the page in our guided notes book back one page. And you'll notice it says now we've covered the three main forms of a quadratic equation. So vertex form we spent some time with. We like vertex form when we're identifying the vertex. It's well named. Because we can look at it, right, and we can find that like h and k value that comes from our vertex form. When we look at standard form has that a, b, c value. It allows us to find the y-intercept quickly, which was that c value, and then we had to do a little bit of work to find that vertex in that form. And then we practiced a lot for a while with our standard form, moving it into intercept form. So we do that by factoring. We write that in factored form. We like intercept form because it allows us to find zeros or find solutions. So in this case, we could do x equals 9 and x equals a positive 5. So this one allows us to find those solutions really quickly. So each of them have their own benefit. And I just want us to recognize for just a minute, think about things that when you look at these three forms, what's similar? Okay, so I'm going to list a few of these things. Now, there could be other things that you think of that you notice. But one, notice that they're all equal to y, so that might be something that comes up. Equal to y, right? This is a function, y is equal to, and then it has an x involved, so they're variables that depend on each other. Notice also, if you look at this, that the a value, see that -2, -2, -2, that's one of the biggest things I want you to notice, is that -2 is the same in all of them. That leading coefficient that tells us whether it's opening up or down, whether it's super stretched, that's the same in all of these. So if it's in this form, great, we can tell that one's opening down. This one also, right, opening down. This one also negative, so opening down. So the a value, and I'm going to put this in little quotations, is the same for all forms, okay? In this case, those are all -2. On the next one, I could say that they are all quadratic, right? They all have a degree of 2. So when we graph them, they're all going to make parabolas. And actually, these ones are all the same graphs. So we could graph them and see that those are all going to create the same parabola. Then it says describe what makes them different. So just notice that they're, right, this one has these parentheses squared, so that one's raised to the second power in that quadratic. The standard form, there are no parentheses, right? It's just written out. We have our three terms. They're non-like terms. And then this last one, again, is factored, and it's written as a product of those linear factors. So we could list any of those things. They don't have parentheses, right? The vertex form has one squared parentheses term. Intercept form is completely factored. And those are just things that kind of help us understand which form it's in so we know how to solve or simplify. This should say does not have parentheses, right? Vertex form always has one set of squared parentheses. And then our intercept form is factored completely. So when we write it in intercept form, that's when we have like those two parentheses. Okay, so just as a review, vertex, standard, intercept form, we're just going to look at vertex and standard right now, just finding that vertex. So that was one of the main things that we talked about, so I just wanted to solidify it right here where we're putting them side by side. Again, in the vertex form, we have an H and a K, and that helps us to identify the vertex, which is why it's titled vertex form. We do the opposite because this is moving it right 7, and then it's moving it up 8. So the vertex for this equation is 7, 8. Now in standard form, we talked about in order to identify the vertex, we have to use the A and B value. So our A value there is -2, our B value is 28, and we always do the opposite of B, or -B over 2 times the A value. That gives us the X value of our vertex, and then we can plug it back in and find Y. So in this case, our b value is 28, so I'm going to do negative 28 over 2 times the a value, and the a value in our equation it looks like is negative 2. So from there, that's negative 28 divided by 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. I'll write that out. So in this case, it looks like we're going to have 7 as our x value for the vertex. So up here I'm going to put 7. Once we know the x value, again, we plugged it into the y value. So we're going to come over here, take that original equation, and we plug in the x value to find the y. So we put that 7 in right there, put them in here, plus 28, again, put it in for the x, times 7 minus 90. So when we simplify this, you can just plug that whole thing into your calculator or simplify it by hand, and you will end up with a positive 8. So notice this vertex is the same as the last one. So really these equations would be the same thing. They're just in the different forms. Okay. All right. You can look at the key below if you want to do a few more of those and practice those. But essentially, once we understand the 3 forms, then we can move from one form to another. One form can give us some information, and then we can find information from another form. So the goal here is we can move from one form to another. Now, it says right here, the focus is not to solve the problem, okay? We're not finding the solutions, but clearly create a logical and connecting flow of math. So this is like a written paragraph in English. You're starting with one form, and then I should see every step along the way. That's like sentence structure in mathematics, okay? So our goal is to start at the top or the beginning or one of the forms and then move our way into the other forms, showing a logical pathway. So the first one here is given to you in vertex form. That's what we're going to practice today. We're then going to move it into standard form, and then we're going to end up in that factored or intercept form. Okay? So if we look at this first one, I'm going to walk through this example and then we'll do our own. You'll notice, remember we said if you have something raised to the second power binomial, that means there are 2 of those binomials. So notice the first step is to write out 2 of these side by side. Now, there's a lot going on here, right? And we just want to do one little piece at a time. So I'm going to have us FOIL this first. So the first thing we want to do is actually go through and FOIL this to simplify. So we're going to get x squared right down here. Then we're going to get 1x plus 1x plus 1. So you've got that FOILed out right there. And then notice we just combine those like terms. So we end up with 2x in the middle there. And notice that 3's just come along the whole time. And then it's the 3's turn. So now we still have parentheses. To get rid of those, we need to distribute the 3 in. So the 3 then gets to come in. And when we do that, we get 3x squared plus 6x plus 3. Notice that negative 75 has just been coming along. So now it's time to combine it with its like term since we got rid of the parentheses. And we get negative 72. That's our standard form. We then move forward by factoring. Now remember, our steps to factoring is we look for a greatest common factor. Notice 3 divides out of all of those. So we pull the 3 out front, and then we divide it out of each of those. So we end up with x squared plus 2x minus 24. And then we just keep factoring like we've been practicing. Okay, so let's walk through one of these. Over here off to the side, we've got y is equal to, again, my first step, and I have a negative here, so I'm just going to leave that negative where it's at, is to take the x plus 3 squared and write 2 of them. So x plus 3, and then you have that positive 9 on the end there. From there, I'm just going to go ahead and FOIL. Now, everything else has to keep coming the same as we do one piece at a time. So I'm going to do x times x, and I'm going to end up with, oops, I've got lots of things going on, x squared, x times 3, 3x, 3 times x, 3x, and 3 times 3, positive 9. And then you have that positive 9 on the outside. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and distribute that negative in. Oh, let's not do that first. Look, I have like terms I forgot to combine. Oops, see these like terms? Let's do that first. So we're going to get x squared, and then 3x plus 3x is 6x, plus 9. There we go. Now let's distribute that negative in there. So that's like a negative 1 if you want to think about it as a negative 1. Distribute it in there, we would end up with negative x squared. Negative times 6x is minus 6x. And negative 1 times 9 is negative 9. And then we still have the plus 9 at the end. So notice for our final standard form, it looks like we're going to have negative x squared minus 6x. And then we have a negative 9 and a positive 9. So that actually adds to 0. So this right here would be our final standard form. Okay. And then if I want to write it in factored form, I just follow those steps that we've been practicing. So look for a greatest common factor. Now notice these both have an x in common and a negative in the front. So I'm going to take out a negative x. And when I do that, that leaves a positive x here because I pulled out the negative. And it leaves minus 6, plus 6 because we pulled out the negative with the x. Now, this one we can't factor any further. There's no more squareds in there, so this is actually our factored form. So we've got the 2 there. And the cool thing is once you have all 3 of those forms, you can actually identify these key features pretty quickly. So this one says, let's identify some key features down here. And this one asks us to use example 3. So I'm going to use these equations right here for this one. And it wants me to identify the vertex first. Now remember, vertex is most easily seen in vertex form. So here's my h, here's my k. I know that down here when I write my vertex, that this is going to be, again, you do the opposite. So negative 1, negative 75. That just comes from that vertex form. And then we know the axis of symmetry goes through the x value of the vertex. The range, we look out front to see if this is a positive. Notice that 3 is positive. So we know that this graph is going to, I'm going to write a little picture over here, open up. So the range is going to go from our y value of our vertex up to infinity. The y-intercept, remember the y-intercept is most easily seen in the standard form. It's always the c value. So there's our y-intercept right there. So we're going to put 0, negative 72. And then our x-intercepts come from our solutions. So again, that would be our intercept form. So if I want my solutions, one of them would be negative 6 from this factor, and one of them would be positive 4. So my x-intercepts here would be negative 6, 0, and positive 4, 0. Okay, we can do the same thing with the next one. Again, you're looking at vertex form to find the vertex. So that would be our negative 3, positive 9. Again, the axis of symmetry goes through the x value of the vertex. Your range on this one, so if you look out front of this equation, notice that negative continues the whole way. This one is opening down, so our range is going to come from negative infinity, and then it'll stop at the y value of our vertex. Your y-intercept, again, comes from standard form. It's the c value. Notice that c value is 0. It's not even there. So your y-intercept must be 0, 0. And then if we look at our factored form here, it looks like we have 0 here and negative 6 here. So our 2 factors there would be, again, 0, 0, or our intercepts, and negative 6, 0. Okay, and that's your notes. That's what you're going to work through today. So your only assignment as far as practicing this is working through 6 and 7, and then you're going to turn over the page, and then 8 and 9, and 10 and 11. And again, you just need to show those logical steps as you flow through it. So don't skip any of these parts. Make sure that all of your work is shown here to get any credit for these. And again, you just want to make sure that as you're writing these out, that each step can be clearly seen so that you're following those steps and making sure that we're clear on that. Bring that y equals with you down the whole way. Once you've moved all of these from vertex form into standard and intercept form, you'll notice at the very bottom of this it says to put the standard form in a box and intercept form in a circle. So just make sure you go back and kind of label each of those so I can clearly see how you did on it. All right.